Almost hysterical North Korean troops greeted their leader Kim Jong-un during his made-for-TV inspection tour of military border facilities. Kim wants the world to see this as he has dramatically stepped up his dangerous rhetoric. On his way to Afghanistan, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel made clear how closely the U.S. is watching.
The United States of America and our allies are prepared to deal with any threat.
CNN has learned the U.S. has recently stepped up surveillance using aircraft, radars, and satellites already nearby. Military officials say so far there are no signs of unusual military moves by the North. But there is a disturbing new weapons program, the KN-08. U.S. officials say this missile, shown in a North Korean military parade last year, is now undergoing engine testing. It's a three-stage ballistic missile with a potential 3,000-mile range. That's not as far as the rocket North Korea recently launched, which could hit Alaska or Hawaii. But what makes this so dangerous to the U.S., the North Koreans can drive the KN-08 around on a truck launcher.
They would hide a bunch of these in an underground bunker in a garage, and possibly under cover of darkness, they would all...
The Chinese government repeated its calls for restraint over North Korea, while Chinese experts warned their country would back more UN sanctions if North Korea went ahead with a third nuclear test.
China is deeply concerned by the relevant trends. China opposes any measures that might increase tensions on the peninsula or be unfavorable to denuclearization. We hope relevant parties can exercise restraint to preserve peace and stability in Northeast Asia.
Spokesman Hong Lei was speaking after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un added his voice to the North Korean National Defense Commission's earlier vows to launch more long-range rockets and conduct a third nuclear test, targeted, it said, at the country's arch-enemy America. North Korea's official media said Kim himself had ordered his top military and party officials to take substantial retaliation measures against the US. On Tuesday last week, China backed a unanimous UN Security Council resolution condemning North Korea's December rocket launch, tightening existing UN sanctions against Pyongyang. That prompted North Korea's vows of retaliation. After flying to Beijing on Friday, America's Special Representative for North Korea policy, Glenn Davis, said his country and China had reached a strong degree of consensus on North Korea after talks with Chinese leaders. Unusually, an editorial in the state-run, usually nationalistic Global Times said China would not hesitate to reduce aid to North Korea if it conducted another nuclear test. It added, however, that China would also oppose extreme sanctions pushed for by the US.
If North Korea conducts the third nuclear test, China will certainly agree to new UN Security Council sanctions. For China, however, the priority will continue to be preserving stability on the peninsula. It will work to persuade the US against sanctions. This is why the US will of course argue against sanctions that are too flexible. In this way, a fourth round of sanctions against North Korea will be a compromise between the US and China.
At the Foreign Ministry, spokesman Hong Lei said the Korean Peninsula issue was in essence related to security. He repeated calls for talks, even though their likelihood is receding. Last week, North Korea's Foreign Ministry declared an end to the six-party talks. The talks involving the two Koreas, China, the US, Japan and Russia, aimed to persuade North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons in exchange for aid. They hadn't been convened since 2008. Stephen Rebay, Press TV, Beijing.
Top stories today, the growing threat from North Korea. Sources telling Fox News the Pentagon is ramping up security and resuming the implementation of its missile defense shield. This after North Korea warned of a preemptive nuclear strike against the United States. General Jack Keane is a retired four-star general and former vice chief of staff of the Army. Are we safe, General?
Well, there's certainly a growing threat from North Korea. We know they have nuclear weapons. They're trying to miniaturize them so they can affix them to a missile. And they've developed missile technology, which they just tested back in December, that is attempting to reach the west coast of the United States, obviously to include Alaska and Hawaii. That's where they're heading. We have to take that threat seriously.
So these interceptors that we understand are going back into place, or they're being placed in Alaska and California. How good are they?
Well, our missile defense technology is the best in the world. And you saw a display of that to some degree with the attack on the Israelis, because the technology they have and what we have is very close. So we do have the capacity to knock those missiles down, to be sure, and certainly thickening that defense land-based. But we're also thickening the maritime and sea-based defense as well.
We've heard so many threats over the years from North Korea, General Keane. Why do you think this time is different, or is it even different?
Well, it is different in terms of the evolving nature of the threat, as we just discussed. They're increasing their capacity and capabilities. The Pentagon has got to take that seriously, because they don't get involved in the emotion and politics of a threat. They get involved in what are the real capabilities. And these capabilities are real, and they're increasing. So that's serious. The other thing is dealing with the new leader, Kim Jong-un. And we still don't know a lot about him, and his reign is developing right before our eyes. But he's out seen an artillery site just recently, which is the same site that fired in 2010 on the South Korean island where they had casualties there. And the other thing is they have a new president in South Korea, and usually North Korea has some kind of provocation after a new South Korean president takes office. So we don't know what he's going to do, but I suspect he's going to do something in the next few weeks or months.
What's also concerning to many analysts is the relationship between North Korea and Iran. There's certainly a lot of focus on missile interception